Work order dependency lets you define relationships between work orders within the same job. It tells the scheduler that a particular work order is dependent on another work order, and as such, can't be scheduled before the primary work order's scheduled finish date. Basically, work order dependency allows you to define precedence between work orders, just like you define precedence between departments. Remember, you can't set dependencies between work orders that live in different jobs. You only define dependency relationships within the same job. There is an important relationship between work order dependency and sequencing. If a work order is dependent upon a primary work order, it must be sequenced after the primary work order. Usually this means that once you set up one or more work order dependencies, you'll have to manually sequence work orders, explained in Chapter 7, Work Orders tab. In fact, the scheduler automatically turns on manual work order sequencing when you create a work order dependency, if it isn't already your sequencing mode. Whether you need work order dependencies on a job or not depends on how you've set up the job in ShopPack. If the work orders underneath the job are self-contained, in other words, they don't rely on another work order within the job to precede or follow it, you don't need to set up dependencies. As you can see in this job, each work order can be scheduled as a self-contained batch, flowing through a series of departments defined under the work order. It really doesn't matter which work order is scheduled first. They are independent. Now consider this job. This job clearly contains a need to establish relationship dependencies, so the scheduler makes sure that dependent work orders don't start before predecessor work orders are finished. You can set up work order dependencies on the Job Tree tab and the Work Orders tab. Both forms have a column called Dependent Work Orders. If you will be working on the Job Tree tab, make sure you are in the Work Orders grid view as shown. To define a work order dependency, select the work order that's the primary work order, right-click the grid, and select Work Order Dependencies. This displays the Work Order Dependencies dialog box. It lists the job ID and description and the primary work order that you're setting up dependencies for. Click New. This displays the Choose Dependent Work Orders dialog box. Select the dependent work orders. You can use the Control and Shift keys to select multiple work orders at one time if necessary. Click OK when you are finished. This returns you to the Work Order Dependency dialog box. You'll see the selected work orders in the list of dependent work orders. Click OK to return to the main window. To properly schedule this job, we need to set up a few more dependencies. All of the casework work orders need to be completed before scheduling the installation work order. To set up the dependencies, we make the installation work order dependent upon each of the casework work orders. This gives us the following dependent work orders column. Now the scheduler knows what the internal relationships are between the work orders in the job. When sequencing work orders, you'll need to make sure that the order supports any and all work order dependencies you've created. They don't necessarily need to immediately follow one another in the work order sequencing queue. But the relative order must be maintained because dependent work orders require their primary work order's scheduled finish date, which the scheduler uses as the dependent work order's earliest scheduling start date.